Girls of Reddit, what made you go from maybe I would date him to no way I would date him? He told me he was excited about the possibility of a relationship with me and couldn't wait to delete our individual FB profiles and create a joint couples one. No. Hell no. I was a single mom talking to who I thought was a great guy. Then he dropped "I don't think I could raise someone else's child," which I understood. Followed by "Do you think your parents would adopt him? My son?" Hold up, what the duck? No. I understand not being comfortable with raising a child that's not your own, but suggesting I'll just give him up for you? Duck you dude. Duck you. He told me he was in love with me the second time we hung out. Not to mention he used to call me in a fit of rage, sobbing profusely when his mother would cook him something he didn't fancy for dinner. Yeah, safe to say, that fling went nowhere. Finally a thread for me. After flirting with me for weeks, he saw a picture of my sister and told me she was gorgeous and much prettier than me. He's still kind of flirting with me after that. In all honesty, she is prettier than me, always has been. And I knew he would think it, but I never expected him to say it to my face. When I was 19 I had a part-time job. A guy I worked with was kinda cute. We'd hang out after work and play rock band, etc. He was nice. I thought we might kinda hit it off. Then one day he started telling me about how the Bush family and the royal family in England are all actually a race of lizard people and part of some giant conspiracy against humanity. So, yeah, I couldn't. I met a guy at a concert and he seemed really laid back and funny at first, so I agreed to go on a date a few days later. I soon found out he had a serious one-upping issue. If he asked about my workday and I said it was really stressful, he'd say, "Oh, I'm sure it wasn't as bad as my day." Or if I said I think I overspent while clothes shopping, he'd say, "I paid $1,600 for new golf shirts today. I'm sure you didn't spend that." This went on about even the tiniest little things. The last straw was when I said I loved Frozen and I'd probably seen it a million times. He said in all seriousness, "Oh, I've seen it 1,000,001. After 4 dates I realized I absolutely cannot put up with someone constantly trying to outdo whatever I said. He was constantly correcting people's grammar to the point of absurdity. I was talking about one of my favorite board games and accidentally said Cosmic Encounters instead of Cosmic Encounter. He thought that one S was worth interrupting the conversation for, so he could correct me. I suddenly realized if I dated him, I would basically dating Sheldon. When I noticed how much he lied, it was practically constant. He would forget that he had already told me a different version of the stories he told me. Once he even ducked up telling me what nationality his parents were. The first time he told me his mom was from A and dad from B. Second time mom was suddenly from B and dad from A. Tried telling him that he could be honest with me and just tell me why he felt the need to lie like that. But he just got mad at me and told me more lies. So I eventually gave up and just went with it. I still get sad thinking about him. I just think he was incredibly insecure and he had absolutely no reason to. Oh man. I think I'm late to this, but I'm super freckly, and halfway through our first date beer, he started in about how freckled women ought to be flayed, how hideous freckles are, and he wouldn't shut up, on and on about how ugly freckles are. So I paid my tab, thanked him for his time, and he started to full out sob, gasping for air, sobbing about how he thought I was perfect for him and how sorry he was. I realized that I didn't want to date this gentleman when he confessed he wasn't a doctor. In fact, he volunteered for St. John's ambulance. The lie wasn't his fault, however, as I'd been talking to his mother on Plenty of Fish dating website and not him. She was pretending to be him to try and fix him up with women. Edit, my lack of punctuation. Sorry. PPS talk at one point had been quite fruity. Bleerg. Before our first date, texted me and told me that he told his mom he met someone. Yeah, okay. During our first date, spoke non-stop about how smart/awesome/compassionate/etc he is. When I told him I volunteered for an animal rescue, his response was a disgusted look and, "Oh, you're bringing stray to your home." After seeing that I was visibly pissed by that remark, he proceeded to tell me how he really liked dogs, used to have a dog when he worked in Africa, took really good care of it, even take time off to take the dog to the vet, but unfortunately had to tie it in the yard when he had to escape in the night, but he made sure to leave it with some water, and about how he would really like to adopt a sick/disabled dog now. It was hard keeping a straight face after that. There was no second date. There's this guy who was smart, educated and very ambitious. We went out together few times, and it was going fine. Until he started criticizing me for the time I spend with my friends, and every time I wanted to go and see them, he acts as depressed and needs to talk to me, so I wouldn't see my friends and go see him. That was awful and childish. Met a guy abroad, he and his friend, and me and my friend were the only guests from our country. We clicked, had this super romantic cliche summer fling. Met back home, turns out he legit held the belief that women are less than men, because women are not prepared to apply themselves the way men are, and he had never met a woman as intellectual as himself before. Yeah, okay, thanks, but no thanks. It didn't last. Went on one date with a guy, and he was the sweetest. Super nice to the waitress and everything. Went on second date on a rooftop. We saw an overweight, which should not matter, couple kissing while he was dropping her off at the apartment. Dude started yelling obscene things and calling them names. Let's just left him to go apologize to them and never went back. We went out for a few drinks on a few occasions. Actually enjoyed his company on those PG rated dates. One night I ended up at his house and we ended up in bed together. In the middle of the fun times, he gets up and starts cooking some chicken. Not just a few chicken breasts, he spends 4 hours cooking like 10 kilograms of chicken. In the middle of the awkward hours of me in bed and him cooking chicken, he stops by the room and compliments my nipples. Yay, no thanks. I picked him up in my car because we were going to hang out, and he told me his friend thought I looked like shit, but he thought I was cute. I turned around and took him home and didn't speak to him until years later when he was my server at a restaurant and had no idea who I was, but told me I looked familiar. Met a dude on OkCupid who seemed okay enough on the first date that I agreed to a second. I still wasn't sure where things were going until about an hour in, he said he owned some tarantulas, 24 of them, and he'd had even more, but had to give away about half the tarantulas in his recent move to the city we lived in at the time. I then proceeded to ask a lot of questions about tarantulas and learned a lot about them because there was no way in hell I was ever going to go over to his place, but I figured I may as well learn a thing or two about them from someone clearly passionate on the subject. A couple years ago, my mom set me up with her coworker's son. The guy, we'll call him Mark, picked me up and drove me to Seattle for the day. We had the best time, hit it off super well, and he was really good looking. After sightseeing and going on the Ferris wheel, riding the ducks, etc., we started driving home. That was when he rolled down the window and threw all his trash in his car out the window. Noped out of there immediately. F you little bug Mark. He was charming, intelligent, and cute. I knew he had had a crush on me, so I broached the topic of maybe trying to date. He was all for it, but after that I noticed him being rude and dismissive of me. Constant interruptions, talking down to me in my own studies that he wasn't well versed on, loud objectifying comments of not only me but other women. In the end I cut it short after a few weeks, because I got the sense he didn't respect me. This was years ago and recently one of our mutual friends reached out to me to talk about some of the weirdness of that time. Apparently he would complain about me constantly behind my back, while also voicing insecurities that I was too good for him. I never saw it that way. If he didn't act like that towards me, it could have worked. The fallout out from that also destroyed any chance of a friendship between us after, as he made some cruel and malicious comments to me after I called things off. Wow, this couldn't have been asked at a better time. Met this guy, thought he was really cute, and he knew a lot of my friends, so I thought it would be great. I knew he had some health issues and family problems, but it didn't really bother me. We went out to get drinks, and we had an awesome time. He tells me a bunch of stories about himself, and when I mean a bunch I mean the whole conversation was all about him. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but then we hung out again, and the stories were about him again, and they aren't all fun stories. After our third time hanging out it was more like he was throwing himself a pity party every time we talked. My friends started saying the same thing too, like wow he's kind of depressing. I also realized that he knows nothing about me, but I can tell you damn near every bad things that's happened to him. After 3 times I'm really over it and don't want to be with someone who is trying to bum me out all the time.